Hi, I'd like to invite all the children to come up. We're going to do a song. You can bring an instrument and just play that if you don't know the song, and I'll give you the words. This is our prelude, Peace Like a River. Yona, Oliver. Yeah, come on. Do you want an instrument, Yona? There's some in the box there. Okay, come on up. So this song is called I've Got Peace Like a River. And the words are up there. Ready? Peace like a river, I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got wings like an arrow. I've got pain like an arrow. I've got pain like an arrow in my soul. I've got pain like an arrow. I've got pain like an arrow. I've got pain like an arrow in my soul. I've got tears like a raindrop. I've got tears like a raindrop in my soul. I've got tears like a raindrops. I've got tears like a raindrops. I've got tears like a raindrops in my soul. Strength like a mountain, I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain in my soul. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain in my soul. Thank you.
We begin our service today with a land acknowledgement. The state of Michigan occupies the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabeg, the Three Fires Confederacy, the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi. Northwest UU recognizes historical indigenous communities in Michigan and those who were forcibly removed from their homelands. We further recognize the ongoing relationship of dependency upon and respect for all living beings of the earth, sky, and water. In offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm indigenous sovereignty, history, and experiences. Welcome to Northwest, a Unitarian Universalist congregation. I am Tom Ott, my pronouns are he and him, and I'm the worship associate for this morning's service. As a reminder, we are using the COVID Act Now website to track the community risk level in the Detroit metro area. Currently, we are in the medium community risk level category. Our choir will be performing live. However, we will not have communal singing this morning for those who are here in person. If you are with us online, you are welcome to sing as loudly as you wish. This morning, we have our quarter-time contract minister, the Reverend Fred Wooden. He will also be available after the service for folks to delve deeper into broader conversations about the sermon and the fundamental values behind Unitarian Universalism. Our choir director, Ken Hermanat, and our pianist, Alex Myers, are creating beautiful music with our Northwest singers. Alex is running the AV Tech booth as well. Eva Leventer, our acting director of religious education, along with our children and youth, will be or are participating in the service. If you are a visitor online and would like Northwest to stay in touch with you, please fill out the visitor form you'll see in the chat box. If you are here with us in person, you can fill out the visitor sign-in form in the atrium. Information about our events and updates about the Northwest community can be found on our website, weekly newsletter, and Facebook page. Before we start our service today, we'd like you to greet your neighbors with a wave from wherever you are. We start with those on Zoom. So if you can switch to your Zoom view to gallery and wave to each other, we'll see you from the sanctuary. Now, for those of us in the sanctuary, please turn to that camera and wave to those attending virtually, and then greet each other in the sanctuary by waving. Good morning to all.
One Water by Mel Hoover and Rose Eddington. Water unites us. All water is one water, shape-shifting as it goes on in its unending cycle. The stream we gather by unites us with all the waters of the world, for all of life depends on water. That's why this common everyday element on which our lives depend as sacred. In our thankfulness for water, let us remember to honor, cherish, and care for it, for our own lives and for all life touched by water, and for those who come after us.
Okay. Good. Okay. So now we will have a story time with Mag, and gonna come on up to the front.
Once upon a time, in a time that is both this time and no time, at the turning of the 9th moon of the year, 4 women journeyed from 4 different directions to share a moment of sacredness together. Each carried a pitcher of water from her home embedded with the stories and emotions of her life and community. They congregated around an empty vessel, united in the desire to listen to the stories and hearts of one another. The youngest woman came from the east with the spirit of air. As she poured water from her pitcher into the vessel, she shared stories from her home about the excitement of children being born, the music of laughter that fragranced the neighborhoods, and the bliss of young people falling in love. As she shared the story of her heart, she laughed, and drops of liquid joy burst from her mouth and landed inside the vessel. The four women paused to honor the stories from the east and the spirit of the woman who shared them. The mother came from the south with the spirit of fire. As she poured water from her pitcher into the vessel, she shared stories from her home about adapting to the ever-changing world of motherhood, the challenges of navigating family life, and the difficulties her community faced with transitions in leadership. As she shared the story of her heart, a drop of sweat formed on her brow and landed inside the vessel. The four women paused to honor the stories from the south and the spirit of the women who shared them. From the west, with the spirit of water, came the sovereign woman. As she poured water from her pitcher into the vessel, she shared stories from her home about friends and loved ones who had died, the grief of those who missed them, and the deep pain she carried for the wounds humans have inflicted on each other and our world. As she shared the story of her heart, a tear of sadness fell from her eye and landed inside the vessel. The four women paused to honor the stories from the west and the spirit of the woman who shared them. From the north came the elder woman with the spirit of earth. As she poured water from her pitcher into the vessel, she shared stories from her home about the peace she found in solitude, the comfort she found in witnessing the changing of the seasons and phases of the moon, and the renewal she felt when sharing her wisdom with those who would listen. As she shared the story of her heart, a tear of joy fell from her eye and landed inside the vessel. The four women paused to honor the stories from the north and the spirit of the woman who shared them. Now between the four women was a vessel filled with the waters of joy and happiness, change and transition, grief and loss, and rest and renewal. Mingled together in harmony and blessed by the women through their reverence and love for each other, the empty vessel of water was now a full vessel of compassion. Each woman took out a small container and filled it with water to bring back to their home, to share the spirit of understanding and compassion with her own community.
Now our children and youth are going to join in the multipurpose room for some community games, snack, and some affinity groups. And today we're making boats with intentions for the year. Oh, I was wondering if Hannah wanted to come up today. Hannah, do you want to come up? No. Rose, do you want to come up and carry the flame? Yeah? Okay.
Does the offering feel like a commercial in the middle of the worship service sometimes? We'll get back to our series in just a moment. But one of the things I will be telling you about later today, and I'll say now, is that this too is worship. In some ways, the most worshipful thing you can do, because you are not just paying the bill, you're investing in what you do not have and hope will be. Every other month throughout the year, this community shares half of its plate collection with the Southfield Emergency Needs Fund. Their goal is to help residents overcome personal hurdles to achieve a satisfying and productive quality of life. Human Services is a division of Southfield Community Relations. Your generosity is our first principle in action. Think about it. We say the words dignity and worth all the time, but as I was walking this morning, I take a walk every morning, there's a young man dragging his backpack and his umbrella along, clearly with his home on his person. I didn't have any money to offer, nor did he ask. But I had to take a moment when he asked what road he was on to look it up and tell him. And for a moment, he was a person, not a problem. So when the plate comes toward you, whether you're at home or here, whether it be in person or just in your mind, there's a person holding out a hand. You can give by texting. For example, if you were to text 248-574-8034 with your amount, for example, $20 plate. All those Jacksons need better homes, don't you think? You can donate online. Select give at the plate collection, 50% split. If you're here in person, you can place your check or your cash right there in the basket, right here in front. Wherever you are, you can show your dignity and worth by offering it to someone who needs it to be seen. Tom? I have two confessions to make right off the bat. One, I've never done this water ritual before. It was not part of the congregation I served for the last 15 years. Two, I'm not sure I like it a lot. but I'm willing to learn. Ritual is difficult for us. It's difficult because our tradition came out of traditions that were suspicious of rituals. And so we're a little, shall we say, skeptical about doing things in church. Your job is to listen and disagree with the preacher. But somewhere, and I'll say more about this later, we discovered we need to do more than talk and think. And rituals arise from people, not come down from preachers. And this ritual has risen. You've heard a wonderful story already that says in better words anything I could offer, or what I was presented with as part of the script, which is really lovely, by the way. I will mention this. Just last week, I think was it on Sunday? No, it was before that. My wife and I were down at the ocean. Actually, we weren't. We were in Annapolis visiting family we hadn't seen for some time. Thank you, COVID. And we got in the car, and I drove flat-footed hard all the way to Ocean City, Maryland, which is about 140 miles. Now, that's a resort with a boardwalk and Ferris wheels and popcorn and all that stuff. I hate it. But there was an ocean. And those of you, I hope, who have had the pleasure, the honor, the mystery of being beside an ocean, you know its power to command your attention. Not only to command your attention, to get you to stop thinking at all. The water ritual here is designed to stop us from thinking about things and just be present to the water. The water all around us that is the air, the water within us that is the stuff of which our bodies are made, the cycle that lifts the water into the air, carries it into lakes, down rivers, back into oceans over and over, such that the water you drink today may be the same water you drank 10 years ago. Each of us is in some sense a drop constituted, evaporated, and reconstituted over and over again. And so when we bring the water to the common bowl, it is to empty ourselves into it, knowing it will come back. The Greek word for that is kenosis, to empty, which is what prayer is supposed to do. So in a sense, this is your prayerful moment of emptying yourself into a bowl where you cannot be found again, but from which you will draw yourself in the future. This ritual of gathering your many drops, which, so to speak, starts the church year as though somehow it ever ends, any more than the water cycle itself ever ends. It is our pausing point to remember that if we do not bring ourselves to this effort, there was nothing here at all. So pause for a moment before the pianist over there, Alex, will play a tune and ask, who am I today? What am I bringing to this spot? The text I was given said gifts, talents, and skills that you will contribute to this community. That's recruitment. I'm asking, what soul do you bring into the room? All the things we heard mentioned earlier when Mag was speaking, the joy, the gratitude, the sorrow, the pain, all of which come out of us in tears and perspiration, all of which are part of the great ocean, part of the lake, part of the river, part of you. And so we pause now as you look back upon the path of your river this year, as Alex plays the music, and then you shall have the time to come and bring your water forward. Alex. The bowl is almost empty, except for a small amount that has been saved from last year as a reminder, a leavening. At the end of this service, that which is added will be collected and saved for next year. Now I'm going to ask Tom to begin the ritual by pouring water from one of the pitchers and sharing what he will bring, what he is bringing this year.
Well, let's see, I'm going to do another term as the church clerk. I'm a worship associate. I record bids for the service auction, and I trim all those hedges out there.
Those of you who are not in the room, but in the home there in Zoom land, we need your presence. So if you'd like to raise your hand as you're ready to share and can be unmuted, Tom will add some water to the bowl when you speak.
If folks on Zoom have waters or skills they'd like to share with us, you can unmute yourself now, or raise your hand rather. Linda, you can share now.
So I bring my joy of being a master gardener.
A master gardener. Who else?
Carla, you can talk. Oh,
Joy of being a special ed paraprofessional.
Thank you.
Linda Morris.
Hi, I didn't plan to do this, so I didn't comb my hair. Wait, I do? Yeah, okay. That's why I'm this water's from Seattle. Well, from all the lakes and the Puget Sound. Seattle was the first time I've seen my family in 2.5 years, and the first place I've gone in 2.5 years, and I came back with COVID. But here's to my water.
Thank you for bringing your family to be with us.
Of course.
Excellent. Anyone else online? I think we can shift to the in-person folks.
For those who are here in this room, if you have water close at hand, please take the moment to come and add it to that which is there. And if you've done that, please share a word about what you're bringing, as well as the water.
Congregation, but I'd like to bring my joy of music, and for Peace Camp I brought bubbles.
Just before Labor Day, I, Mike Yanko, rejoined other families who grew up here with names like Stetner and Decker, and there was a wedding of one of their daughters. And this is the water of Crystal Lake, Illinois, where the wedding of UU children happened.
Thank you.
I bring to the church friendship, and I've been inviting individual members of the church to lunch, and this summer had lunches with friends from the church in Plymouth, and this water is from the fountain in the park in downtown Plymouth.
Thank you.
A couple of weeks ago, we spent some time on Lake Huron, and I went there with my family, going in with the intention of being more wholehearted and embracing being more positive about things, and that's what I hope to bring to the congregation over the coming year.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to add water, either virtually or actually?
Good morning. My name is Mark Denny. This water is from right out of the ground at our house, from the well on our property. and it is in recognition of all that the earth gives to us.
Thank you.
I didn't bring any water, so you can represent water for me. But I will bring to this community, even though I'm going to be going here part-time, like half, I'm going to start going to Brighton Church half-time, and then I'll be coming here half-time, so I'll be sharing my heart. But I'll bring lots of hugs and a service heart, and a commitment to you as my family. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I actually see Cheryl has raised her hand online.
Thank you. The vessel to me is as representative as the water. As a newly semi-retired person, I'm holding space and bringing that space for transition and reflection. And that's obviously very relevant to where we are as a congregation as well as in my personal life. So I'm with you all in this journey.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
In Wisconsin and go to the Wisconsin Dells, and it was so rejuvenating to be in the same place that I've been going since I was a small kid. And so the constancy and to share that with my children was fantastic. And so I also bring constancy here.
Thank you.
I too didn't bring water, so people pour some for me. Appreciate that. I bring to the congregation advocacy for social justice, and my organization and we're doing interfaith work to try to preserve access to water for people in Detroit. So many people have had their water shut off, and I can't fully ever appreciate what that would be like for me. But there's a group of us that have been, there's been a moratorium on having water shut off that ends in December of this year. And so the mayor has then introduced a water affordability plan, which is what we've been advocating for the last 7 or 8 years. But we're now concerned that that plan needs to be improved. So I'm just letting you know that there's a fight for water that's going on for people, particularly in low-income communities. So thank you.
Thank you. Much as your joys and sorrows light this community with your spirit, your water enriches it and gives it the stamina to continue. All that you give in labor and love is part of the lake, the river, and the ocean in which we live and move and have our beings. Thank you. I take it you're a congregation that doesn't like to applaud. Considering you can't sing, I'd think clapping would be the thing you'd do most. Unless it was really, no, it's really that good. That needs to be. So it's already nearly 11:30. Tough luck for you. I don't know where that rule is written, and it's not going to work today. But I start every service with the same words, or very nearly. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. In the Northwest UU community, a neighborhood of its own, but also in a neighborhood that extends from this spot in Southfield, Michigan, to wherever you are out there in Zoomland. When I say it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, I really do mean for you to think of Fred Rogers, as I did last week, a fellow Fred, a fellow clergy person, and a reminder that no matter how old we are, we still want someone to say, I like you for who you are. That's an important thing that needs to be done. As you heard, my name is not Fred Rogers, but Fred Wooden. I am your consulting minister. Now, Tom said I'm quarter time, and that's to remind you I'm not hanging around a lot. But when I'm here, we resume a journey that is going to run through this entire year, each one linked to another, and I hope that by the end, you will not only have a new minister in your future, but a new sense of where you're going. Not that I'm going to tell you. I'm going to help you decide where you are and where you're going. In a sense, we're going on a pilgrimage, and if you know me at all, that's something I do as one of my spiritual practices. I have made long journeys by foot, not the whole Camino de Santiago. That's 4 weeks. I can't afford that time or that money, and neither does my wife want to see me gone for so long. But I have made on-foot pilgrimages twice in England, once in Japan and Peru. And I've visited sacred sites in India and South Africa, Greece, and Turkey. That sort of thing comes easily to me, I discovered. It may also be said that it's natural as a lifelong UU, because one of the readings we have in our gray book from the 20th century theologian James Luther Adams describes us as a pilgrim church, a servant church on an adventure of the Spirit. I kind of like that. Doesn't that feel like us, an adventure of the Spirit? Yeah, that's the same James Luther Adams, whom I met and studied with, who was the author of those 5 smooth stones that you might hear about if you hang around long enough, the 5 smooth stones of Unitarian, of liberal religion, while our association actually has 7 and probably eventually 8 principles, all of which are being reviewed right now by the Article 2 committee. They stand on top of a history, a tradition of thought that we call the 5 smooth stones. And the first one is the one everyone everywhere remembers the most. We say revelation is not sealed. That's a fancy term for saying that religious truth is not and cannot be put into one book or one church, one religion, or one creed. It's everywhere. It cannot be contained. And what's more, it keeps happening. I think this is perhaps the oldest of liberal religious ideas, that the truth is not just in here, it's out there. Our great early thinker, Theodore Parker, the fellow who created the phrase arc of the moral universe, by the way, summarized his faith in the 1840s with this: be ours a religion which, like sunshine, goes everywhere, its temple all space, its shrine the good heart, its creed all truth. I like that. Our creed is all truth. Isn't that the whole first smooth stone all over? Everything that's true is worth believing in. But he's not the first to say it. One of those great old Protestant guys, Ulrich Zwingli, at some point said, whatever is true is God's word, no matter who said it. I think there's merit to that. You can find them yourself, those smooth stones. I hope you will. What I want to do today is begin to answer the question how we do the work of the truth, of the just, of the shrine, all those words. As sweet as the old song says, we need more than love. We need money. We need work. We need conversation. We need controversy. We need commitment. We need more than our heads. We must bring ourselves to the task. And so I'm asking, what must we, as the community of Unitarian Universalists, do to be faithful to these lofty ideas? Pause. I'm going to go back 30 years now, more than 30 years. Around 1985 or thereabouts, I was new in my second congregation, a little New England church that had been founded in 1655. I think some of the original members were still lurking. But I began to hear the newer members, people my age, say, I'm interested in being more spiritual. Now, I've been to seminary, I grew up UU, and this word meant nothing. What is this spirituality of which you speak? At the time, it felt like they wanted me to be more, well, more spiritual in the sense of being more inspirational, less intellectual. And at that moment, I said, oh, they want some seasoning to their worship so they can feel more religious. And truth to tell, for some it was that. They wanted a little glitter. My predecessor played the guitar. I don't. He was folksy. I'm not. But I went through a transition. I went from thinking it all just a little kumbaya to thinking I was just not able to grasp this thing that so many wanted in their lives. It was as though I was colorblind in a world where everybody could see the rainbow and all I could see were shades of gray and black and white. Turns out I'm right on both counts. There is some very cheap spirituality out there. Actually, not so cheap. If you go to the bookstores, whether that's online or in person, the inspiration bookshelf is chock full of stuff to help you live a meaningful, purposeful, inspirational, inspired, healthy, wise, good life, as long as you plop down $15.95 at the bookstore or at Amazon and load it up on your Kindle. But there is something also very genuine behind the merchandising of spirituality. And I think it's this longing to make the abstract more concrete, to do something with your life, not just think about it. Now, that's where we are losers in the religion sweepstakes. Other religions have rituals. They have prayers they recite every week. They have stuff to do. They not only light candles, they'll burn incense. They strew flowers. They eat meals. They have fun. We talk. In our religious world, there's no handbook to tell you how to get from spiritual tenderfoot up to Eagle Scout. And I was a scout, and I liked that handbook. It told me what to do and how to get there. We don't do that. So you're on your own. You're on your own. I've often said, and you've maybe heard this before, and you'll hear it again, if you want the real definition of Unitarian Universalism, it's the church of you're not the boss of me. But that doesn't mean we don't want guidance, that we don't want structure, we do not want ways of engagement. That allows for lots of diversity, and that's wonderful. Room for you to make your own choices, and that's great. But if you don't make those choices and don't do those things, you're just kind of being spiritual in circles and wondering why it feels the same all the time. Are there things, though, that we ought to do? Things, let's call them spiritual practices. No, we're going to call them spiritual disciplines that you ought to do in this church if you're not the boss of me. I'm not your boss, but I'm the one talking and you're the one listening. Yes, I'm here to tell you there are 4 ways in which you are obliged to do the work of Unitarian Universalism. As a community, I'm not talking to any of you personally. There are no report cards, there are no permanent records. But I'm here to remind you that there are at least 4 ways that you are already engaged in spiritual disciplines, and if you did them with greater intentionality, greater clarity, you would begin to feel with greater confidence where you're going in your spiritual life. Now, there's not a time to do them justice. In fact, what I'm doing now is I'm pulling something out of a book I'm writing, which eventually you'll be able to buy on Amazon for a reasonable price. But it's going to be worth it, I guarantee it. Here are the 4 disciplines every UU congregation practices, whether they know it as a discipline or not. One of them is this. You got out of your beds, came here this morning, and sat down because this act of worship promises to give you something that you didn't have at home with a virtual newspaper and a 3rd cup of coffee. It may not deliver it every week, but you come with that expectation. Worship is a vital spiritual discipline of this community. Annie Dillard, in her essay, Teaching a Stone to Talk, describes ritual as something that includes a certain tilt of the will. I like that phrase, to tilt your will out of, shall we say, straight ahead toward one side. It is the moment that we pause here in this room or in the virtual room to separate the urgent from the important, as Stephen Covey likes to tell us. You're not going to be talking about here, God save us, about the budget. You're going to be talking about what is in your soul right now. And if I don't talk to you individually, you're thinking individually and saying, is he going to say anything that matters today? And already I have, because you're thinking about it. Worship is that moment you commit by being present to being open to the nagging questions, the puzzling problems, the constant longing, the hunger that cannot be permanently satisfied, the thirst that must be quenched. Worship begins when we turn aside from the mundane. Who of you grew up in a Christian household? You don't be afraid to raise your hand, it won't kill you. You may remember the story then of Moses. He ran away from Egypt because he was a wanted fugitive, because he was a murderer. He hides out with a bunch of shepherds in the wilderness. And his father-in-law, because he marries a local woman, says, go take care of the sheep, which he does. And it's nice and calm and safe, and he knows what to do day in and day out until he looks up in a crag and he sees something flickering up there. Moses turned aside, it says in the Bible. He turned aside from the sheep. He turned away from the obvious toward the unusual, from the urgent, take care of the sheep, to the important, something is going on up there. Every Sunday you hope to find a flame burning in a crag, and that's why you do it. Worship is to choose to look for the burning bushes. No one worships by accident. No one comes away saying, oh, I didn't know I was in church. It never happens. And in that choice lies the most crucial act. You're saying, this time, this moment matters to me. How often do we do things that really matter? How often do we phone it in? God knows I get up and do the same thing every day. And thank goodness, because if we had to think about every moment, we would never get anything done. But the reality is that we have to make choices. And we want those choices to matter. We want to spend our time on stuff that hangs on. In a sense, worship for us really is a sacrament. It's a ritual action in which we are looking for the sacred somewhere in our lives. Now, it's not in the room. It's not in this building. It's in the showing up that it matters. So you can find it in the silence of a Quaker meeting house, the droning chants of Tibetan monks, and boy, they can chant loud, I got to tell you. The grandeur of a papal mass, or standing at a graveside to say a few words. All of those are moments of worshipful, sacred power. I can remember, in fact, walking amid the funeral pyres on the banks of the Ganges in Varanasi. You know, there are bodies burning in the open. There are great heaps of them. And I thought, this is creepy. But then someone said, no, come with me, and led me between the pyres. Yes, I could see the bodies being burned, and yet at the same time, the families were there revering their departed one. They were carrying them down into the water and bringing them back, stacking up the wood. They were lighting the fires, and I felt a kind of holiness in that place that I have seldom found anywhere else, because they brought every ounce of their soulful energy to that moment. It was sacred. Now, that doesn't happen in church a lot, thank whatever. Even when we tilt our will toward the transcendent may not show up that day. That's why worship is a practice, not an experience. It's the way we learn to be present in the world to what is important. I used to play the piano. I'm terrible at it now. Why? Because I haven't practiced. Practicing is boring. Practicing is hard. Practicing hurts. But every now and then, you sit down at the piano and music comes out because I practiced. This hour, this week, is the practice of worship, the tilting of the will, the intent to notice the sacred, so that when it happens to us out there in the world, whether it's Varanasi or at a stoplight on Woodward Avenue, it's there and you're there to see that burning bush and recognize you were in the presence of the holy. Worship is a spiritual discipline. So when people say, oh, I go to church now and then, I want to say, good, but I don't want to go to your house for a dinner if you only cook now and then or clean now and then. Come on, show up. It's where you learn to be holy. Second, study. Can you imagine a UU church without an RE wing? Not even possible. In fact, many congregations, like yours, built your religious education building and then later added your worship building. Why? Because learning is a central function of the liberal religious endeavor. Why? Not because there's so much truth out there, although there is. It's because there's so much untruth in here. The act of study is not the acquisition of truth, but the departure of untruth from our minds and bodies. Here's where the word discipline comes in handy. Discipline. Well, I can remember at one point I got into trouble with my high school, actually middle school history teacher, Harriet Rivkin. I remember her because she was the daughter of a rabbi, which was something I had never experienced before. And she never gave homework on Friday because it was the Sabbath coming up. She treated us as worthy of rest, not just her. Well, I botched a homework assignment or forgot to turn in a work, and she said, Weldon, that's my first name, I need to see you after class. Knees a-trembling, hands wringing, I approached her desk. She said, you need discipline. And I immediately thought of rulers on knuckles and standing in corners. And she said, but you have to understand, Weldon, discipline comes from the same word as disciple, if you've ever been to church. She knew this Christian stuff too, apparently. Disciple means student. Discipline is the path you follow to learn. You strayed from the path. My job is to get you back on the path of learning. Are you a disciple of Unitarian Universalism? Are you willing to walk a path that is subject to some accountability if you stray off of it? Not because you're a bad person, but because if we don't get guidance, we can stray from the path. I mentioned my pilgrim walks through England and Spain and other places. I got lost. I had to open a book, look at the map, and say, I'm lost. The book was my guide. We need guides in this community. Whether it's a clergy person or a friend, we need to be accountable in some way. Not because we're bad, but because we need guidance from each other. The radical part of Unitarian Universalism is that every one of us needs guidance and is a guide as well. It doesn't flow upward to the authority. It is shared between us. Because what Kathy knows and I do not makes her my guide. And that is the genius of learning, of study, being ready to untruth yourself so that you can grow toward truth. Third, service. Now, service we all know. We all volunteer. It's not about charity, though. It's about democracy. You see, in this community, if everyone isn't taking part, the job isn't getting done. Now, you want to say, you're going to force me to come in and make the coffee or clean up or go to church? No, but I am going to give you a stern look. Because free riding is not allowed in a free church. Everybody has a task, and that task is to take part. And every one of us is a servant. One of the most powerful popes in the Middle Ages was the guy named Gregory the Great. And he signed all of his letters, Servus Servorum Dei, that's Latin. Servant to the servants of God. I am Servus Servorum. I'm a servant to the servants. We are all called to serve the faith, to serve the community, to serve our nation. What would our lives be if all it was getting and not giving? It would be a form of, forgive that term, moral and spiritual obesity, of not sharing what we had but taking from others. Like worship, it is intended to work over time. It's an exercise in learning that when you serve others, you are in fact served in return. And a community like ours is an incubator where we try on new ways of serving. My church in Brooklyn had an annual rummage sale. It was immense. It took up the whole downstairs. And someone who ran it said, I love doing this. For one day a year, I am running Macy's. But he also discovered he had a gift for doing that and then applied it out there in the world in his other volunteer work. How many of you have discovered things you didn't know you could do by doing them for the first time in this community? Yes. You became better at being you by serving, because serving is itself a learning. It enlarges our ability to be of service to others beyond our community. It is the spiritual basis of democracy, because we all have something to offer. It is the spiritual basis of social action, which is we have a responsibility to repair the world that we live in. Most often, the last one has one thing, and that's sacrifice. Yeah, that means giving money. I'm not going to be shy. Like it or not, money is how our labor becomes concrete, and we want you to put it in the box, in the plate, online. But there are two aspects of it that need to be lifted up as a spiritual discipline. One, sacrifice itself is a form of service. I can't do this, but I'll give you money to do it because you can and I can't. It acknowledges the value of the other in a way that your service cannot. What makes it different in a different way is that when you give money, you're not in charge of it anymore. Think about all those philanthropists who give money as long as you put my name on the building or start this wing or do this project. That's not giving, that's controlling. Real sacrifice means, here's my money, I trust you to use it well. Moses Maimonides, a great thinker in the Jewish tradition, said there was a series of stages of giving. One is you give to the person and then tell them what to do with it to make their lives better. How many times have we tried to help a person on the street by saying, I won't give you money, but I'll give you a sandwich? You're essentially saying, I don't trust you to make a good choice, because if you were making good choices, you wouldn't be poor. And that's judgmental giving, and it's not giving, it's judgment. And we've all done it. Maimonides says at the other end, as I give without knowing to whom it's going, and the person who gets it has no idea from whom it's coming. Sacrifice is a funny word. It literally means to make holy, to make sacred. Sakros fecit. It means letting go. And in the act of relinquishing something of value to you, your money, you have just given holiness, sacredness, and value to whoever and whatever received it. I understand we have to give acknowledgments. You have that beautiful plaque out in the hall with all the people who gave to the Capitol campaign. That's a way of showing how you all took part. But sacrifice really means I am giving this up. I am relinquishing. It's a really Buddhist thing. It's a Zen thing, people. Learn to be Zen. Give your money and move on. Now, here's the other aspect sacrifice matters. You're giving to a future you are not in charge of. It's an act of faith. I trust you. I believe in this, and I'm not going to be running it. At some point, we have to invest in a future we will not take part in. That's hard, very hard. There's a great old joke about Morty, who night after night was praying to God, God, just let me live to win the lottery. Night after night, he would say, God, just let me win the lottery. At one point, the sky opens up, a light falls on Morty, and a voice says, Morty, help me out, buy a ticket. Sacrifice is buying a ticket to the future. If you're not investing in it, even if you're not there, it won't happen. Make it sacred. Make the future better than today by making it happen and then going on. Now, you may not think these are spiritual disciplines, but there's another old joke that'll help me out here. The seminary student asked the professor if it's permitted to smoke while praying. The professor says, of course not. But another student, smart aleck that he was, said, but is it permitted to pray while smoking? Of course. The Apostle Paul catches this irony when he says, each should give as one has decided in their heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for you know this passage, for God loves a cheerful giver. I like asking for money because I want you to be cheerful in the doing. And if you are laughing at that, you've got some spiritual growth to do. When I was in my last church, my wife and I, we made a commitment to tithe 10% of my salary. And I discovered I did without nothing. I had the same amount of meals out. I enjoyed the same amount of fun. I deprived myself of nothing, and I was able to do that. When was the last time you challenged yourself to give more and smiled? You can do this. All of us can. One last note. Spiritual disciplines are not to make you feel good. I exercise every day, 6-7 miles a day. I do 2,000 miles a year. I do 90 push-ups twice a week. It hurts, but I'm healthy. My doctor says, you're a unicorn. You don't take any drugs for a guy almost 70 years old. Spiritual practices are exercise of the soul. They don't feel good while you're doing it, but at the moment you need that strength, it will be there for you. Strength of soul is not to be knocked flat when something drastically terrible happens because you've been thinking your way through that. To be sure of who you are, to be resilient. Emerson famously observed that there is a crack in everything God made. Don't you love that? And you, of course, know that Leonard Cohen took that a step further and said, that's how the light gets in. Spiritual disciplines, worship, study, service, and sacrifice, they're not here to heal the cracks. They're not here to make you whole. They're here to open them up, to let more light in, because your perfection is not the point. Your transparency is the point. Your ability to be broken for a better cause, to sacrifice who you thought you were for what you might be, to worship what you did not expect and yet found present to you, to learn something about yourself, not just about the world, to find in service a sense of value in yourself that no paycheck or position could offer. And isn't that what we want spirituality to be about? Spiritual disciplines open the cracks and let the light in, painful though they are. But in the end, there is more light for all, and I think that's worth it. I think I've gone well beyond what you expected in time. I hope it was worth your paying attention this long. And if you want to talk about this, when we're done, take a bio break, come on back, and we're just going to converse because you need to think about this, not just me. As for what happens next, Tom?
Hymn number 136.
Okay, we're going to sing. Well, you're going to listen. You can hum. They're going to sing, and everybody out there in Zoom land, I want to hear a joyful noise, or at least see you making your lips move, okay?
Together
It starts with a drop, then a trickle, a burble, a rush of water bubbling towards its destination, and finally the wide, endless sea. All rivers run to the sea. Today you brought water, poured it into a common bowl. Though our experiences have differed, these waters mingle, signifying our common humanity. Today you came and shared in this sacred community. May you depart this sacred space, hearts filled with hope for new beginnings, a fresh start. Go forth, but return to this community where rivers of tears may be shed, where dry souls are watered, where your joy bubbles, where your life cup overflows, where deep in your spirit you have found in this place a home. All rivers run to the sea.